Is the motion be agreed to? And I call the member for McNamara.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. And reading this motion, I thought, surely not. Surely this motion is going to be withdrawn now that Victoria is in the state in which it was. But perhaps the only conclusion I could draw, that a motion talking about a Victorian lockdown that doesn't exist anymore, was that it was sent in via Malcolm Turnbull's NBN. That could be the only reason as to why it took so long to get to this place and finally be debated. But if this pandemic has taught us anything, is that you don't play politics with a pandemic. You don't play politics with a pandemic, because if you do, it looks like what it does in the United States, where the political class and the political leadership is undermining health efforts, undermining the experts, undermining the efforts of those people trying to deal with this pandemic, and instead we are seeing the people of the United States resist the health measures that are designed to keep them safe. Don't play politics with a pandemic, which is exactly what this government has done. And you think, and this government, I'm sure, is very proud of their efforts over the time, picking on the Labor states and picking on Labor premiers. Well, it worked really well in the Northern Territory. It worked really well in the ACT, and it worked really well in Queensland. After their relentless attacks on Labor premiers, that went really well. Playing politics with a pandemic is really great stuff, and I encourage you as a federal government to do that to Victoria, because I can tell you one thing, and that is Victorians are absolutely sick of it. They are absolutely sick of the Prime Minister lecturing Victoria about contact tracing after his excuse for contact tracing was to develop an app that they are only announcing today that they are starting from scratch. Victorians are absolutely sick of a Prime Minister blaming Victorian Labor on the state of the economy in Victoria when they are the ones, during stage 4 lockdown, this government decided that instead of supporting Victorian businesses, what are they going to do? What are they going to do? They're going to reduce the JobKeeper supplement from $1,500 to $1,200. We couldn't even have family over for dinner. Childcare was shut down unless you were for a permitted worker. We were tackling a pandemic. We were at 725 cases on the 5th of August. 725 cases. A comparative state to the United Kingdom, who are now tracking 20,000 cases. France, 50,000 cases a day. But instead the Victorians and the Victorian people decided, no, that's not what we're going to do. We're going to listen to the health advice. We're going to respect the experts. We're going to respect the scientists. And yes, we're going to respect the politicians who are trying to lead this Victorian pandemic and lead us out of the second wave. And instead, at that very moment of need, at the very moment when Victorians needed their federal government, when Victorians needed the support from those opposite, what did we get? We got a $300 cut. A cut of support to businesses, to families, to mums and dads. And it hurt. Now, thankfully, Victoria is now in a place where we are not in lockdown. We are not in a position where we are counting hundreds and hundreds of cases a day. We are not in a position where our hospitals are being overrun. And it is because of the efforts of Victorians to listen to the health advice, to listen to the health experts, to listen to the Premier of Victoria, who each and every day admitted mistakes. It wasn't perfect. He fronted up every day, 120 press conferences in a row. How many times has the Prime Minister stood up and said, you know what, that contact tracing app that I said was our ticket to freedom, that I said was our ticket out of lockdown, how many times the Prime Minister stood up and taken a press conference about that? How many times the Prime Minister stood up and said, you know what, that JobKeeper cut, the job seeker cut that I made during the middle of stage 4 lockdown, that was my fault. I apologise. Here's how we're going to fix it. Not once. Not once. So we won't be lectured to by these people over opposite, constantly undermining the health efforts, constantly undermining those people trying to get Victoria through a pandemic, constantly undermining the efforts of scientists and experts to keep people safe. Instead, they've got conspiracy theorists and playing political games only with Labor premiers. And the Victorians are sick of it. I know this. We know this in Victoria. But I would encourage those opposite, if you want to keep playing your petty political games, then go for it and you will face the repercussions great repercussions at the next election, but Victorians did something remarkable. No thanks to those opposite.